Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Irish Mags Show, brought to you by the Irish Mags NUFC supporters group. My name is Paul and I will be your host for today. And joining me are the Demba to your Papi Cisse. It's Mr. Alan Williamson. Say hello, Alan.
How's it going, lads? How are you?
Good, Alan. Good to have you back. And of course, we have Mr. Crisho Martin. Say hello, Crisho.
Hello, Crisho. Hello, Paul. Hello, Alan. Lovely to see you guys, as always. I'm really enjoying this weekly get-together. Yeah, I love it.
It's great.
It's now a weekly get-together because we're here for week 3. And we won't be doing it every single week, but I am going to just remind our listeners that the Irish Mags Show is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but also on YouTube. So if you do fancy catching perhaps our not-so-smiling faces this week after recent results, you can head over to the Irish Mags YouTube page to catch the show in video form. And as always, don't forget to like, to follow, subscribe, and of course, rate us wherever you are listening. Right, lads. So speaking of those not so smiling faces, and let me get a good look at you now. Actually, I think we need to take a good long look at you lads here. I need to check on both of you. It's been a tough week for Newcastle fans. It's not been our best week, and we've had a lot of ups and downs, but a lot of ups more so than downs, which we haven't been used to. So I need to check, Alan. I'm going to come to you first. Are you okay, Alan? That's the first question.
I am definitely okay. Look, we had a couple of bad results, but what are you going to do? Get up and get on with it. We'll go again. We're a team in transition. I'm a happy man. That's the way we can look at it.
Positive, Alan. Do we have a positive Crisho? Well, I think Crisho, you're probably in better shape than you were last week. Is that the first positive? Because you weren't feeling the best.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't. And now I'm completely cleared up. Feel great. And I was like, to be honest with you, my sickness went at Thursday night at 7 p.m. And then I felt terrible again on Thursday night because some of my friends are actually Everton fans and they took great relish in texting me after that game, sending me gifts of dinosaur arms, doing his dance and stuff. Or I think he was doing kind of a pretend Rocky thing. I was like, what is this Egypt up to? Wish Joe Litton would have got a hold of him. And then I thought, well, look, these are blips. Everton's a tough place to go to. And then, I won't go into it yet. We will talk about it now. But Sunday was, that was hard to watch. I have to say, that was a tough watch. And it factors into my bad take of the week later on. Because, as I said on the first episode, you all agreed with me that Newcastle fans sometimes can just think it's the end of the world. Like after a couple of games, our club's finished. We might as well just go to the championship. But I'm feeling a lot better for seeing you guys on a Monday night. Love it.
Good, yeah. I think as a fan base, we're still getting used to how we should feel because we have a lot of emotions we've not felt for many years, and then when we feel good and then you feel bad, it's hard to process. So stay with us, guys. We're staying positive, and that'll be the theme for today's show, guys. Right? We're going to put a lot of focus, obviously, on solutions rather than problems, as I think is what we're going to try and aim to do. We're going to talk about what we think are the main opportunity areas for Eddie and team post those tough games against Everton and Tottenham. We'll think about how that might impact any potential January decisions with regard to transfers, with regard to selections and looking ahead. I think we'll probably get to chat about the state of play across all competitions because it's important to remember we're still battling across all 4 fronts at the moment as it stands, as we record.
The quadruple is still on.
There's wow, that's the most positive thing.
That's a podcast over. That's
positive
it.
Thing. Yeah,
quad is on. Done.
That's the most positive thing you will likely hear all week, but we love when it comes from Mr. Alan Williamson. And then we will move our focus on the upcoming games, a very exciting upcoming Irish Mags event, actually 2 of them, which was probably a piece of breaking news before we started recording, eyes emoji. And finally, my favorite part of the show, our community spotlight, which includes the now, I want to say infamous, Crisho's bad take. And I, for one, am looking forward to that one this week.
We all are.
So plenty more to come on today's show. Right. Before we do all of that, we need a little Irish Mags update. Bit of a check-in on what's been going on in the Irish Mags community over the last few days. We've checked on ourselves. We're here. We're doing okay. I want to hear a little bit more, and I'm sure our listeners do, about what's been going on in the Irish Mags community. And we're going to go to our community correspondent, Mr. Alan Williamson. Alan, We've had multiple meetups, I believe, in various locations throughout
We
the country.
certainly did. So we had our usual 2 meetups in the
Lots.
Bleaker for this week. With our wonderful pintman Johnny Leahy, who's looking after us with a smiling face despite the results. But a special shout out to the lads down in Cork who made their 3rd meetup of the year, I think, and did a good turnout again. And from what I hear from our committee member Paul Slaughter, he said he thinks it was a great night, but the 17 pint of Guinness he had must have had energy in it because he can't remember a thing after. So it's shocking altogether. But no, all honesty, the lads did a great night. Obviously, barring the results, but you take them because if you what are the good times without the bad times to make you feel better?
Exactly.
I think it's Chris show. It's like we probably have a little show of contrast this week. Last week we heard all about your adventures of having many pints inspired by some very positive results. Paul, on the other hand, was probably on a different type of journey of many pints inspired by slightly more negative results. But it's great to see all of the meetups. We'll have some pictures. We should have some pictures flashing up on screen as we speak, if the editor, whoever that guy is, does his job correctly. And even I was actually in Galway, lads, myself on the Thursday night. I had a work event, just a small dinner with a couple of people, and I conveniently found that the pub next door was going to show the game, and bumped into a guy he's been popping up in the WhatsApp group, particularly the Connacht one, Tom, diehard Newcastle fan. So I kind of had to play the cards of like, right, guys, we're going to go in here and just keep one eye on the match. And there's also going to be this random guy who I haven't even met, and he's going to be near us and beside us, and we're going to have the crack. So I don't know if they thought I was meeting someone online or what was going on, but anyway, we had a good
everybody.
time.
This is Tom. This is everybody.
Tom. It's my friend Tom. Yeah, but we had a good laugh. Obviously, the game was tough, but we had a good laugh, and we're hoping to get a bit more going, I suppose, on the Galway side of things maybe over the Christmas, but potentially into the new year. So yes, nationwide, Irish Mags nationwide.
Absolutely.
Chris Shaw.
Yo.
I'm going to come to you, Chris Shaw. I was going to ask you, are there any other kind of major happenings or events within the Irish Mags community? But I think what the listeners really want to hear is, has there been a gloves update, a Chris Shaw's hashtag find Chris Shaw's gloves update that our listeners need to hear following last week's revelation?
I know this is episode 3, Paul, but this is update 2. Yeah.
Wow.
There's been considerable messages, even like anonymous calls made to my phone to explain to me that they might know where my gloves are, but I guess people are taking the mickey. But there is one thing that did come from last week's suspicious texts and calls that I believe, and if anyone's listening to this podcast, those gloves are in Rosie's Bar in Newcastle on the windowsill by the front door. That's where they were last seen. So that is the update, everybody. They were left in Rosie's Bar on the windowsill by the front door, and on a Saturday night, a heaving Saturday night in Newcastle. So, they might have just, walked off by themselves. But I'm kind of hoping that if I say it here on the podcast, somebody might know somebody in Rosie's Bar. They might say it to them, and we might have a beautiful end to the story, or I can be reunited in Newcastle with these gloves. But that's the update, guys. Rosie's Bar was the last known location.
I'd imagine the chances are slim that they're still there. I mean, we're being positive, right? We're being very optimistic.
Well, it's all positive, right?
On this week's pod. There's probably a slim chance that they're still there. But, I mean, I was going to say something like maybe now that we know where they last were, maybe we could send in a detective and dust for fingerprints. But with gloves, that's probably a big, giant waste of time.
I'm going to ask the lads that are going over for AC Milan, I'm going to ask them to just pop in and see what they can get. And they're like, I'm waiting for someone behind the bar to go, oh, you mean these stinking things from 2008?
Well, yeah. The good news for you, Chris, is I am one of those lads going over this week. We'll probably come to that later. So
show off.
I can't promise anything, considering I'm on the 9:20 a.m. flight, that by the time I get to Rosie's Bar before or after the game, I'll remember to ask for your gloves. But there's a good chance I'll be spotted at 3 a.m. wearing them, and we just won't say anything else about it.
I love it. I'm texting you all day. Go and check. Go and check
on my gloves. Excellent. Thank you for the community updates. Now, right, that's a lot of fun and shenanigans within the Irish Mags community.
And positivity.
All positive, but we do have to roll up our sleeves, and and talk about the events of what has definitely been one of the tougher weeks for Newcastle fans and for the Irish Mags. I guess, we have two games that we could obviously start to pull apart, but rather than do our usual match review, I think, of the Everton game and the Spurs game, I think it might be more useful and more positive and constructive for us to collate our thoughts on both games kind of together, and maybe just talk about where we think some of the underlying problems lie, but more importantly, where some of the realistic opportunities and potential solutions might lie to help us get back on track and hopefully get back to winning ways starting on Wednesday. Speaking of positives, Krisho, I'm going to come to you first. And I guess, we want to stay positive because this topic has generated quite a bit of negativity, I would say. And I suppose it's sticking with the goalkeeping department. Now, look, we've conceded 7 goals in 2 games, which is something we're not used to doing. Especially when they're both away from home as well. And that might be a topic we'll come back to shortly. But I think it probably makes sense to have a quick chat about our goalkeeping situation. Obviously, we've had Martin Dubravka return for those 2 games against Everton and Spurs. Considering his last game, I believe, was the last game of last season against Chelsea. That was when Pope, I think, was having a bit of surgery in his hand. So I guess the question for you, Krisho, are we talking about, is Dubravka, do we think he's not good enough? Do we think it's probably just down to the lack of those minutes and those competitive minutes for a goalkeeper? And there's also some talks about, is he carrying a small injury? I suppose, what have you heard? What do you think?
Look at
number one.
Okay, all right. Look, he does have a small injury. He's been. You can imagine like sitting at the side watching your team play ferociously for a year and a half, right at it, like just like a bunch of best friends, sticking together through thick and thin. And then, by the way, one of the cool guys in the gang, injures himself, and they're like, oh, you come and play and goal. Oh, what is he, 35? Look, I don't blame him for anything. What we have here is that the defending, because of the fatigue, lacks the ferocity that it had last year. And it's not a simple case, and I know everybody would love to think it is, that we have equal replacements to come in and take roles over. We do not. Dubravka is nothing near Pope in terms of the command of the box, his communication with Lascelles or Shah or Botman. We've lost. And the mind about the midfield or needing a 6 or the strikers missing chances when we're 0-0. This is the big thing that Newcastle got to Newcastle to 4th was the back 5 last year. We don't have that back 5 anymore, and it's slowly eroded over time. Focusing just in on poor El Dubravka, even though I just said at the top that he's not good enough. He's okay for an L Cup game or something, but he's not for throwing into very, very important games in the Premier League. And that's why I really feel like that we will have to go and get a goalkeeper in January. I don't know who that goalkeeper is. And I've checked through our groups and I've looked through the internet and I've thought, well, who could we get? I don't even know if there's anybody going to be available in January, but based off the 2 games, conceding 7 goals away, is the back 5. It's not just Dubravka. It's the back 5. And they can, with all the best will in the world, if you look in those last 2 games, we're sitting back a lot more. We're not as on the front foot as we were. Maybe that's true fatigue. Like I said, the lack of ferocity. They just don't have it in them. And Dubravka's completely exposed for what? Of those 7 goals, probably 5 of them, I don't think he had a chance of saving any of them. I don't even think Nick Pope would have had a chance of saving them. And that's more concerning rather than our goalkeeping situation is the back 4. It's not good enough at the present moment.
And I think there's a lot to be said there. I mean, if we think about the majority of the last 2 years, or at least the last 12 months calendar, let's say, right? Especially, the latter half of last season and so on. That back 5, the whole thing was built on that back 5. I mean, it was outstanding. Like, we've all been fans for many, many years. And we've had some really great, obviously great defenders and great centre backs, but we were never known for being this, like, put it this way, we never had the lowest goals conceded in any Premier League season that I can remember. So it's a good segue, Alan, to come to you to talk about the defence. There's kind of 2 points that have been popping up, I think, I suppose, linked into the defence specifically, outside of the goalkeeper. One of them has been Trippier, right? And largely, I suppose it's a combination of, like, his performances might be coming into question, but also is that tying into fatigue? On one side of the argument is this is our most experienced player who's one of few players that knows and has played one game every 3 or 4 days at a silly high level. And then you're kind of flipping that over to the fact that he's not a young man, right? And I can't talk, but he's not a young man. And, there's a whole lot going on. Never mind just playing 90 minutes of football, but the people he has to mark. And at the same time, be a leader on the pitch and know what everyone else is doing. And so much of the ball goes through him. So, like, where should we be thinking on the Trippier situation, Alan, I guess? Like, is it he'll get his rest because he's suspended and then we hope to see the best of him? Or is there more deep down with that?
I think personally, look, we've asked the same 4 lads at the back to go in 5 games in a row. Obviously, Dubravka's come in for Pope, but Trips is 33 years of age. Livramento was brought in because we knew we had more games this year and we weren't going to be able to cope with having Trippier playing 90 minutes week in, week out, on a Wednesday, on a Sunday, on a Wednesday, on a Sunday. And we've had to do that because 14 injuries. Look, life goes on. It's not the end of the world. The defence hasn't been great, but a lot of the goals we're conceding are more sloppy than glaring errors. Okay, Everton aside, Trips had 2 very, very big mistakes that caused 2 goals, and then he was the one that played Beta one side for the 3rd goal as well. So yeah, he had a bit of a mare last Thursday night, but after the amount of performance he's put in for us, I think he's entitled to have one bad game. I definitely don't think he had a bad game against Spurs. I thought, come here, I hate saying it about any other team's player. Heung-min Son is sensational. He is world class, and he had Trips on toast, unfortunately. So
yeah, he did.
There's nothing you can really do about it.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Like, I mean, when you have this many games, it's very easy to get a short-term memory, right? I think I heard somebody say, maybe on the day we played Spurs, that it had only been 8 or 10 days since we played Man United. That feels like weeks ago, especially now, right?
Yeah.
And it really isn't that long ago that we had these defensive heroics against PSG, and we're holding United and Arsenal, and beating Chelsea 4-1. One goal conceded that nobody stopped, and realistically as a free kick. So I think, yes, we can forgive players who, to not be 100% on it all the time, with not just physical fatigue and mental fatigue. But I do personally think it's madness that Trippier is coming under so much scrutiny. You can say, like Alan's made a good point, he's made some mistakes, right? And some of the goals we conceded came from just people's mistakes rather than a shitty back line that's unorganized or whatever. Yes, it's tough to get a new goalkeeper in there, but this guy's been around the club for ages and they train together and so on. So I think it's a bit extreme, the sheer panic and alarm about the Kieran Trippier situation. And the other point that you made, Alan, was like, ideal situation, Trippier is going to be in every big game playing as a right back that we play. And Livramento was obviously to be brought in when needed. That's on the assumption that we had a Dan Burn or a Matt Targett to cover left back. And now suddenly Livramento has been put at left back. And there's questions about Lewis Hall. But yeah, I think there's a lot of panicking. Yes, we've let in 7 goals. And 3 years ago, Chris Shaw, us letting in 7 goals in 2 games it wasn't crazy.
No.
So,
it's difficult here. Like you mentioned about Hall, right? And a lot of chat on the Irish Manx group and across the Newcastle community is, what's Hall there for? Like, is he there just to play come on as a sub once in a while, or play a couple of cup matches? I know he's young, but I firmly believed, maybe it's a hot take, but Trippier shouldn't have played against Tottenham. I know he's our number 1 right back, but after Everton he looked demolished. And if I was a manager, no matter how much of a professional he is, I wouldn't think, let's throw him in 3 days later against Son, one of the best left wingers in the world, let alone the Premier League. They should have put Livramento on the right. I say should, you hear me? Like the coach here. But put Livramento on the right and Hall on the left. Give the young lads a go. It's quite evident that the lads are running on fumes. They're all in empty tanks, every one of them. And if they're not running on fumes, they're in the treatment room with their shoulders and knees and sore backs, and we're falling apart essentially. And again, I know we're trying to keep it positive, but that's where I sneak in like the Grinch and go, no, wait a minute, we're falling apart. We need to buy 13 players in January. But yeah, I just don't understand with Hall. Sure. Yeah, we need to play Hall more. I like the guy; he's good.
Just on Hall, can we all set our mind backs to when Anthony Gordon arrived, and everyone was like, "What, 40 million? We're after doing this, we're after doing that." Nobody really rated him. I'm going to put my hand out there, and I was like, "I think he's going to be sensational next season." He came back this season, and he's ran amok. Lewis Hall was at that Chelsea team that were an absolute shambles last year. Gordon came out after about 6 weeks and said, "I thought it was fit until I got here. I'm not." Barnes said when he got here, "I thought it was fit until I got here. I'm not." Lewis Hall's a young lad. He's playing for the team he loves. I can guarantee you this time next year we'll be talking about Lewis Hall. Maybe even being a centre midfielder. Shout out to Jamie. But I think he's going to be very, very good next season. So fingers crossed and all that jazz.
Yeah.
Next season, we're buying all these players for the future. I know we want things for the now, but football doesn't work like that anymore, unfortunately. You have to build sustainably and you have to do all these things. Might be the richest club in the world, but we can't spend that money. So we have to do it the right way.
I also keep thinking back to, like, I doubt that Livermento or Hall were at the top of anyone's list. These are players who became available and were like, you know, looking at it going, okay, our wing backs and particularly right back are so key to what we do that these are opportunities we can't turn down. So I think once it became anyway evident that, okay, lads, we could get Livermento here. Yeah, not critical position number one that we need to fill immediately, but to Alan's point, a bit more long term. The only other thing I in the back of my mind is, are they looking at it and they're going, Trippier gets booked a lot. Trippier needs one more yellow card to be suspended. Home against Fulham isn't a bad place to be suspended. So, do you know what I mean? They kind of two birds, one stone. He gets his rest, and it's, in theory, even though they've been playing recently, Fulham, in theory, he now gets his rest and comes back with no yellow cards. So, you know, that's got Jason Tyndall written all over it.
Yeah, no, if it seeps into the home form, that's apocalypse day one. If it starts to seep into the home form, say if we do get humped by Fulham, 3-0. Man United got humped by Bournemouth, if you look at it, Bournemouth are very well coached, very young, very athletic team, right? Wolves are the same, right? Even though the results aren't so great. And then who else won? Everton. Yeah, these are much more athletic teams, right? And like I said, the bad take from last week, these guys are dead on their feet. Every single one of them are dead on their feet, apart from Lewis Miley. But even Lewis Miley looked a bit bandy-legged over those two games. He looked like a bit of a Bambi, a little bit in the middle of the pitch. He wasn't as composed because certain people weren't. The one thing I'm mainly worried about, and again, on the Christmas Grinch here, is Joe Linton's performances. He was far more solid last year. He was a lot more composed. He seems very angry. I like his emotion. I love how emotional he is, but I don't know if feeling he's going to do something silly in the not too distant future, like something really silly. And it wouldn't be one for him, but we don't need to lose any more people to silly mistakes. You saw Bruno's elbow against Arsenal. That was crazy. That's a red card all day. Yeah. And Jellington should have been sent off, 3 or 4 times this year already for his behaviour. But
I think that's where you're hoping for things like fatigue and frustration. If we're losing, you're hoping they're not the things that do push there like that, especially when, I mean, they clearly care. They never stop running. Do you know what I mean? And the last thing they want to do is have to come home from London after being spanked by Tottenham. Right? Realistically, could have been more than 4. But you mentioned a point there. I suppose segue for you mentioned Joe Linton and Bruno and even the midfield. You referenced the number 6 a little while back there, and I've heard a lot of talk about the number 6. It's mentioned a lot in our Irish Mags WhatsApp groups. Yeah, but we don't have a number 6, and I genuinely think that while Tonali wasn't signed as a 6 and Bruno isn't necessarily number 6, that there was a plan of how we'll manage the number 6 role. And obviously without Tonali there, and we lost Longstaff as well, we haven't had it. I did observe, I suppose, Everton rocking with, I suppose double pivot is one of those cliches, but they had is it Anna Gay? I can't remember.
Idrissa Gay.
Yeah, I know. I think he calls himself Ghana or something on the back of his kit or something.
Yeah, Ghana. Yeah.
Idrissa Gay and Doucouré, right? Almost like that double. Potentially they're both 6s when they want to be. Probably Gay sits a bit more, and even Tottenham, the same with Basuma and Sarr. So it is, and again we're starting to hypothesize here a little bit, but when we're looking at that midfield, or what they're doing versus what we're doing, and where we have these gaping holes in midfield, is that number 6 a real problem? And Christian, I'm going to come to you for that.
Yeah, well, look, I said last week on the podcast that we should have went with 4-5-1 against Tottenham. And you're thinking, yeah, but we kind of were playing a 4-5-1, and then 4-3-3 in attack. And I just think that lately, look, there's no doubt, and everybody knows this, without Longstaff in the team, it seems like we're a little bit unglued. He's that good. He's such a core component of the midfield. I love Miley. I think he's great. He's going to be a superstar in the future. Fantastic, right? Love him. But if I know we've kind of flippantly said, 14 injuries this, and we've named them off and this, that, and the other, but there's some real key players in there midfield-wise that we are mind about up front. And like I said just earlier, not taking our chances when we're 0-0 against Everton, 0-0 against Tottenham. We did have glaring chances we should have taken. There's no doubt. Whether it was good defending or poor attacking, that's neither here nor there. But in terms of the midfield, all I hear all week, and it was the same last week and the week before it, and if you look it up online, it's Calvin Phillips, Calvin Phillips, Calvin Phillips, Calvin Phillips, Calvin Phillips. And Alan has kind of turned me off Calvin Phillips. I've got a grave concern about Calvin Phillips now, because I think it's another one of these ones where, like I said, you're sitting on the side watching a great team play. And we're supposed to just expect him to just jump in and start playing for us in January and not a bother on him. And he's fine and he's fit and he's up to Eddie Howe's schedule and coaching. I don't think so. So I'm just happy that Longstaff's coming back. I'm much more secure Newcastle United supporter when Longstaff is in the midfield with Bruno, with Joelinton. I would actually take Joelinton out and put Willock in. So my ideal one would be Longstaff, Bruno, and Willock. That's my kind of main top Newcastle midfield. And play Joelinton out on the left. I do think he does a good on the left wing. But look, to go back to my point, really essentially is that the midfield is the grave concern here. And going out and just buying or getting on loan Calvin Phillips it'll lead me onto my bad take, Paul Allen, later about who's to blame for all of this. But there's a big problem here. If it was me, it'd be McTominay that I'd be looking to get. Eddie Howe clearly has seen something with this guy, and I know Alan's got a huge rock level raised eyebrow here, but any time that I've seen him play for Man United, he's done extremely well as an attacking midfielder. He's box to box. He's very fit. He's very athletic. I think he's only 27, or 26. And if it was me, and again, another raised eyebrow from Alan, I would go for him rather in January than Calvin Phillips.
Thank God it's Eddie Howe and not you.
It is, yeah.
Which everybody agrees with, but for many reasons, Chris showed. I mean, I think the only way I can summarize it in my mind is a lot of names floating around there. Just sticking with players we already have, right? Eddie Howe went into this season thinking he had a choice of Tonali, Bruno, Longstaff, Willock, Joelinton, and Anderson, right? At least 6. Have I missed anyone? At least 6 quality, very good quality midfielders who have their job there and know what they're doing. And then you can look at maybe Lewis Hall can slot in as we bring him getting used to how things go. All of a sudden, a lot of those options just aren't there, But I agree. I don't think Calvin Phillips is the answer, but I think getting our players back is the answer.
Absolutely.
Probably ties into. We've talked a lot about fatigue. I don't think we should give it too much more airtime. It's getting an awful lot. Surprised even Alan Shearer to kind of came out today really on their on his podcast with Gary Lineker and said that doesn't really believe that players should be suffering from fatigue. But I just came back to the same thing. The game now is a lot different. The ferocity, the high press, the high tempo. But I think for me, it's a case of the mental fatigue. I think is huge because we've had some huge results, right? Arsenal, United, PSG. We don't always just win those games comfortably. Chelsea, I think, was comfortable and probably United, but a lot of our wins have not been that comfortable. It takes a lot to win a Premier League game. It takes a lot to win a Champions League game.
Absolutely.
And I just feel like there's a lot more to it than just tired legs. There's a lot of tired minds, especially the minds that are needed, the mindset needed to play the way we play. But like Alan, the one thing that's really winding me up now, this takes all of us back to what they used to call Fergie time. And Liverpool now seem to be the new Fergie time, as much as all Liverpool fans will love that comparison. But like the way I see it is Liverpool, Arsenal, they're coming in and winning games at the death. They're coming in and taking full advantage of the +10 that's being added on, because they can bring on obviously they don't have the same injury problems and bigger squads and so on. They're able to do things we aren't, which ultimately leads to them changing games and going from a point to 3 points, because they have a bit more in the tank in terms of resources. So like, I guess, Alan, the question is, how much is that stopping us? We're never going to go out and win every single game in the first 80
Absolutely,
minutes.
yeah.
There are games you need to win at the death, and I can't remember the last time we did that.
I can't remember myself either now, but what we all have to remember is we're still 2 years ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
Nobody in their right mind thought we were going to be in the Champions League after 18 months. This is bananas. Like, don't get me wrong. Liverpool going into the 80th minute, if they have Nunez up top, they can bring Gakpo on. If they have Salah on the wing, they can bring Jota on. And we're kind of going, we can bring Matt Ritchie on and pray. Like Arsenal can bring in Ketia or Trossard on or something like that. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
They're not. Liverpool probably have the best bench in the league. They don't have the best team, but they probably have the best bench in the league. Which I hate admitting because I hate them. But the way we've always said it is, look at this bench tonight, or say on Wednesday night, and then in 365 days, factually, our squad is going to be stronger, and that's all we really want is progression. We're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like, we couldn't even name a full Champions League squad because we haven't got the facilities to name a full squad because we don't have the players. So it is a bit of a cop out when I say, oh look, there's nothing we can really do about it until we have more time. But at the end of the day, we do just need more time to help build and progress this squad naturally. It's the only way it's going to happen.
And I think we'll come to that now in our next section, which is usually looking at a bit of Newcastle news and transfer rumours. But I have one kind of quick fire question for either of you lads. I'll open to the floor. Why is our away form so poor? And I'd love to know, like, what is it? What have you? First of all, what have you read? What have you heard? But like, deep down, what do we think? Is it as simple as the energy you get from St James's Park? Because every other team has to go and play 19 games away in a season. Why are we so particularly poor away from home? Don't all jump at once there now.
No, I think that. Oh God, I don't like saying this. Oh God, I think Eddie Howe's been out tacticked. That's not a word, everybody, so don't ever use it in a sentence. But he's been out tacticianed, or whatever you wish, by the Bournemouth one was a worry for me. And you think, oh, are they just hitting it down the wings and getting at us as quick as we can? And we're not. Here's what's happened in the last 8 games, like something that hasn't happened in the last 20, where our form was a little bit better away. We're not taking our chances. I'm going to keep it as simple as that. Like I said earlier, I've said it 3 times now. We didn't take our chances at 0-0 against Everton or against Spurs. And essentially what's happening to us is that all Newcastle games now are pressured, right? People have a lot more expectation on us, not just our own fans, but the media, the world's media. And we have good players and we've got good results. And like Alan said, we're over delivering. So once we go 1-0 down, I'm not saying our guys are going hiding or anything, but the other team are obviously growing in confidence, where they were a bit wary before about Newcastle's catching them on the hop, or like against Brentford. I think we were 1-0 down, then it was 1-0, then it was 2-1 last year. Teams used to worry about that. Lately, they haven't. They've just been, you know what, let's just go at Newcastle for 90 minutes. If they're going to come at us like that, well, we'll do the same to them. And it just seems to be working more in at away grounds, that Newcastle, through, like you said, Alan, a couple of silly mistakes and not taking our chances, we are getting punished like we didn't last year and the year before. We're getting really punished hard. Some of Everton's goals were very poor. We must have just handed them the game, essentially, which we did. But that's what I think essentially is that, we're just not taking our chances, Paul.
I think it's fair. Like, it is actually, I mean, for my mind, I'm like, that is actually a really simple way of looking at it. There's many other reasons, right? But like, if I think about the Tottenham game, obviously recency, but if we'd have put away one or two of those early chances, the Gordon kind of Isak semi miss, I suppose. I think Bruno should be hitting the target with that shot that because there was a big gap on goal there.
Yeah.
When you're the away side and you score first, it shuts the crowd up, and I think that's massive because teams don't usually get to do that in St James's Park, and that's where we benefit even more from the crowd. So, Grant, okay, I really like that answer, so I think we should leave it at that. And we'll move on then towards, again, we were talking about solutions here, lads, and this brings us into a little bit of news and transfers. I think largely focused on probably what we've heard in the last week. Again, we're going to be hitting silly season very soon. Chris was already got his lights up there, Alan, as you can see.
Yeah, I'm silly season.
Once
all
January
over.
it's hard to think it won't be Newcastle, like from now until the end of January, right, until that deadline slams shut. So let's just talk, I suppose, a little bit, not so much who we'd buy, right? Because, this isn't a Football Manager here, as I've got it behind me over my shoulder. More so about rumors that we're picking up on. And I know a lot of our Irish Mags members tend to have their fingers on the pulse, or at least keep an eye out for things. So what have we heard, Alan? I guess particularly, I'm going to come to you about two topics we've mentioned already, which is goalkeeper and that number 6 role. Any rumors on the horizon? Anything that makes sense, or that we might actually go, do you know what, this is actually really good idea?
Well, according to Twitter, the best, or X or Twix or whatever the hell you want to call it nowadays. Yeah, Phillips is a done deal supposedly. January 1st he'll walk through the door. He's all know my viewpoints on Phillips and his one arm, but here we go. If Eddie Howe wants him, I want him. David De Gea, that's a no-go. It's just not happening. I don't care what anyone says. He's a 32-year-old who was on 350 grand a week. It can't happen. Ramsdale, it pains me to say that Eddie Howe probably wants him. I absolutely do not want him anywhere near the club because he's no better than Pope. Yes, he's better with his feet, but he has actively come out himself and says that I cannot keep my head in the game for 90 minutes because I don't have the attention span. That's terrifying. You're a footballer. That's mad. I'm going to try pronounce this name, Mamardishvili, the Valencia keeper, the Georgian number 1. It's going to cost a pretty penny. I think you're talking 50-60 million for this kid, but if it was Football Manager, just throw the bank at him, lads, because he's going to be world class. Other than that, we're linked to everyone in the Saudi league. Anyone that has had a decent game in the last 2 years is on their way to Newcastle, if you know what I mean. And then any agent that wants to get their players a new contract or a move should just link up to Newcastle. So remember, don't believe everything you read, but I do.
I mean, look, only Dan Ashworth and maybe Eddie Howe and the board know the answers. But I think what I like, what most of us like, is hearing more names. I think we've been stuck on Phillips. We were stuck on Neves, right, because of the whole the drama around the whole Saudi thing, right?
Yeah.
And Phillips just hasn't gone away. Which in one way it's like, come on, give us a few. In the other way, Alan, to your point, maybe it's already done. I like that Mamardashvili's name is popping up. He's a giant, which helps. But like, again, I think, Alan, you said it. If Eddie Howe likes him, or if our scouts like him. So, Valencia are an interesting one because they've had some really, really poor seasons. For a goalkeeper to be doing well throughout that is impressive. And that's exactly what Nick Pope did at Burnley. He shone in the team that eventually got relegated, So I like that. Krisho, sticking with names that I suppose we picked up. And there's more, I suppose, heading up the pitch. Talks of a right winger still circulate because a lot of people thought that's where we should have been in the summer. I mean, look, we've got Miggy there, who's leaps and bounds. Similar, the same could be said for Murphy. Are we still? Have you heard much about the right winger situation? Is Harvey Barnes the answer? Just get him back and put Anthony Gordon over on the right, or is there still whispers?
I think that was always the idea. Was Gordon Barnes. I think they're very pleased about that, or pushing Wilton through the middle and putting Isaac out on the right or left to have like a couple of options. I think we should stick with Jeff Hendrick. Do you know what I mean? Jeff
Wow.
Hendrick. I mean, and you've heard it here first.
That's the end of you. You're gone.
Okay,
Alan, I must tell you about our new segment, which is Grisho's bad take of the week by Grisho.
That is awful.
No, stop, guys. I'm only messing. I'm just going to give a shout out to Jeff. Thanks for all your service, Jeff. See you later.
Fair play, Jeff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely right. But Smith Rowe from Arsenal, right? Again, like a Willock Steele from Arsenal. Let's get him in, right? But the thing is, I'm worried about. He is a right winger, but he isn't. He's kind of like an Anderson. He can play right across the three, can't he? He's kind of like a number 10. But again, I think Howe likes that he definitely can play in different positions. But I've got a sneaking suspicion after Alan kind of saying that Phillips is going to walk in with his little bag like in FIFA through the doors. I think Smith Rowe is going to be standing behind him on January the 2nd. Now, whether it's a loan just for the end of the season with an obligation to buy, but I definitely think Smith Rowe is coming in. And they might bring Anderson in from Crystal Palace ahead of the summer to be brought in to have cover for Lascelles, Botman, and so on. This is what we've got here.
Okay. So far we have a goalkeeper, centre half, a right winger. Alan, we talked about number 6, and Alan, we might as well. There's no point stopping there. Let's talk about striker. So you yourself mentioned there the Liverpool example is very good, and maybe they're quite fortunate because resources, they've been Champions League a lot longer than us, more money than us, and therefore, they can pretty much in one game or across 3 games, they have Darwin, they have Jota, they have Cody Gakpo.
Yeah,
options being the key word.
Yeah,
we have Wilson and Isak, who, I mean, on their day at full fitness or on their game, I would have before any of those 3 that we mentioned. But I think it's fair to say that as fans, we've rarely seen a time where we had both strikers fit, and both of them kind of stringing together a good run of form. I think the start of the season, they both had about 6-7 goals, and they were both kind of fit for 7, 8, 9 games. I feel like we've not seen that for a while, and you get that fear that we may not. So, I suppose the last thing, Alan, will be: are we in the market for a striker?
I think we will be in the market. I don't think necessarily be a striker. I think it'll be someone who is very versatile, can play across the front 3. If Emile Smith Rowe comes into the club, there's something going on, because that's just not an improvement. I don't think. I would like personally Kevin Sharda from Brentford, or he's lightning quick, he's mental, or Guy Becker. I think he plays for Wolfsburg in Germany. 21, only a kid. I'm pulling all these from FIFA and Football Manager. I'm going to be totally honest with you. It's not like I'm out scouting these lads. They are all very, very good, but Kevin Sharda, he's the guy who turned Botman inside out for the penalty last year when Botman nearly got done for GBH. He roasted the whole back line. Botman cleaned them out. But he was direct, and that's exactly what I want in a player. Someone to not put their head down and run like a headless chicken, because we have Jan Kuba Minta, and to quote the great Sean Casey, if he puts his head down, the likelihood is he will run out of the stadium. He's that raw. So I don't want someone like that. I want someone a little bit better. But that's the other thing we have to realise. We have Minta out on loan at a Champions League side, getting a game, doing very well. Come back next year. What are we going to do with him if he's potentially world class? Say, because we don't know. We haven't seen him. He is an unknown entity for us, really. It's a tough one. I can't see a striker coming in, unfortunately. I can see a defender and hold the midfielder, and then maybe press for another loan. But I can't see a striker coming in, not permanently anyway.
Fair enough. Yeah, I know there's been a lot of whispering about that guy Hugo Ekitike, who originally was linked to PSG, and there was a lot of nonsense around that. But yeah, I think that sums it up. Enjoy. There's a reference there to be found. Okay, that's this week's rumors. I'm sure we'll have more next week. As we said, we're going to approach silly season. It's only going to amplify. But I just think for me, was never expecting goalkeeper to be in there, and now that it is, it's just like we could do without that. But look, we are where we are. We're used to a bit of adversity. We wouldn't be Newcastle fans if we weren't.
Absolutely.
Alan, one other piece of news in the Newcastle United world.
Yes,
it has been relating to the stadium, and this is in reference to the stadium survey that was sent, I believe, to a large subset of fans or members. I think season
tickets, memberships, and potentially if you're just a on the mailing list, you might have got one. I gave out that I didn't get one, and then found it in me junk mail, so you could still get it and not realize you have it. Yeah,
twist.
so yeah, I did have it, and I did fill it out, but
that's the email just coming through on Chris Show's phone there now.
It was. It actually was. They must be listening.
They must be. So, Alan, tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think this was more of a what would you do in a worst case scenario where they were like, look, potentially if you left, how far would you be willing to go? Potentially if we knock down the stadium, would you be happy? I think this was Newcastle going, right, we'll ask them the worst of the worst. We'll show them, like there was a picture in it where it's nearly like a settee, like a couch and a television in front of it, but you're sitting at the side of the pitch and you're like, that cannot be real. It just came across as very American, and it didn't come across as what I know St. James's Park to be. But the new bit of news that's come out recently is Darren Eales did a mini interview with TalkSport, and he said that the company that helped Anfield go from 52,000 to 61,000, and the guys that done the Spurs Stadium are officially in talks with us over expanding the East Stand and potentially the Gallowgate. Now, how we can do that, as he said, everyone's an amateur architect. If they can pull it out of their you-know-what, I'd absolutely love it. I've had my little say on what I would love to do, but I don't think it'll work because I'm not an architect. I said, leave St. James's for a year. I know people won't like this. Leave James's for a year. Level it. Start again.
Boo.
Switch the pitch and go dig down and get a third tier in. Make an 80,000 to 85,000 seater stadium and go with full hilt for it. You're still in the centre. It's still St. James's Park, but it's new St. James's Park. But come here, as the same with Eddie, if Darren Eales says, I'm going to do this, we have to trust him because they've gotten 99% of things right so far. So credit where it's due.
Yeah, I think patience where it's due as well. Like, I mean, I'm surprised you didn't try and name it St. Alan Stadium there, but it's again back to Alan's dream. Alan playing with the St. James's Park Lego again. But you really like the take here is there's an awful lot to be discussed. People are like, oh, it's taking so long, but I mean, it's a hell of a decision because once you start, you can't really stop, if that makes sense. You know, Everton, Valencia are another one who've gotten into, deep problems with their stadium plans and stadium rebuilds and all that, especially the money side. So you have to be careful. So time will tell, I guess. And I think keep an eye out because I think I'd expect probably in the new year we might hear some more noise on the feedback or a lot of the responses to those surveys as well. Super. Okay. It's now time for my favorite part of the week, lads. And clearly I have an exciting life and a lot going on. But my favorite part of the show this week, because I did mention I'm going to St. James's Park, which hopefully will slightly edge it. But it's the community spotlight where we have 3 quickfire rounds. We like to talk about our crack of the week from our resident crack merchant, Alan Williamson. I'm going to give you my highlight of the week, and then everyone's favorite segment. It's Chris Show's bad take of the week. So, Alan, tell us what has been making you giggle and chuckle in the Irish Mags community this week.
Well, the crack of the week it's a tough one for this week, really, because there wasn't too much crack with all the football that was going on. But Sunday arrived, and a certain Mr. Paddy Breary made the long trip up from Wexford with his wonderful wife, who's a Scouser, but we'll say nothing about that. Come here, lovely, lovely lady. But Paddy spent the entire day giving her nothing but dog's abuse, and it was absolutely hilarious. Now, all in good nature, but it was absolutely brilliant. I have to say, Paddy, tip of the hat to you. It was great. So, Paddy Breary, you're getting the crack of the week this week. Fair play to you.
Good man, Paddy. Good effort.
Honorary mention this week. We have high standards now going forward, for sure.
Yeah.
I think my highlight of the week, I mean, it'll probably fall back onto what I mentioned where I bumped into Tom there on Thursday night. And again, because I've mentioned to you, I was at a bit of a work event. But I guess I've suddenly inadvertently kind of imposed my fandom of Newcastle for the last 25 years on all my workmates who thought they were going for a lovely dinner and a few pints and had no idea what they were getting into, because we had a lovely dinner in a tapas restaurant in Galway City, really, really nice, and lovely, lovely bit of wine. And then it went straight into Newcastle, and it didn't stop for about 3 hours. So now, whether they liked it or not, my work night out, our Christmas work night out with my team became a Newcastle United night out, and I'm totally fine with it.
Was it one of those things, Paul, where like you guys are eating away and chatting, and you're like, "Oh wow, look, it's the Newcastle game on behind you there." Oh wow. Oh really?
Pretty close.
Oh,
we met outside, and some of them were late, so we were all kind of waiting outside for each other because of traffic and stuff. And I said, "Oh, do you know what? While we have time here, I might just pop into that bar and actually see if they're showing this match there. I might just keep an eye on it, and then we'll know where we're going to go for a pint after the dinner." You know? Completely planned from 3 days before that. So it worked, and that's my highlight of the week.
I love it.
Now, Krisho, tell us the bad take of the week. That's in it.
Well, gentlemen, there is several bad takes this week, as we all know. Yeah, Newcastle are finished. Our season is over. We need to replace the first 11. There's a litany of them. I could keep going. They're all dreadful. Yeah, it's like as if we're now the worst football club in the world, and our season's over. I mean, that was going to be the bad take, but the bad take is even worse than that. Yeah. So, Alan, like you said, the thing you said earlier is that we're still on for the quadruple. Yeah,
absolutely.
The season is not over in any shape or form. So let's just reiterate that again, everybody listening. It is not over. But the bad take of the week this week. Dan Ashworth, his transfer policy has caused our present situation. Now, right, Dan Ashworth performed miracles at Brighton. I don't really care what he did with England. It's none of our country's business. But
yes,
what Dan Ashworth did at Brighton was sensational, right? Buying in young players. They might have been selling them on for millions, but they were athletic, they were young, they were hungry, they were coachable, right? Now, he has done a bit of a whirlwind here with Livramento and getting Hall in on. Like Alan said, it's going to be a superstar next season. But, right, Dan Ashworth, I know maybe people might think he hasn't got the money to work with because we haven't signed all the sponsorship deals yet, and we'll see that more next year, right? But there's massive suggestions, and not just by that Egypt, the false Geordie. What's his name with the beard?
True Geordie.
True Geordie. Yeah, good one. Yeah, good one. But his points were a bit salacious, just for clicks. Mine is straight up as a bad take. This is what I've heard all week: is that Dan Ashworth, not only is he leaving for Manchester United at the end of the season to become their sporting director, as the Newcastle dream crumbles away. And the Adidas sponsorship dries up. But Dan Ashworth, here's his transfer policy is 2 years ahead of schedule. And what we have here now, all the other windows were very important, right? But this one coming up, this January transfer window for Dan Ashworth and Eddie Howe is enormous. It's absolutely enormous. Okay, Alan, I'll be happy to see Calvin Phillips walk in on day one, but I'm also expecting 5 or 6 more. But the bad take this week is that Dan Ashworth is not doing his job properly. He is in a little bit of the couple of people he's bringing in, but he's not really doing what he did at Brighton, what he's doing for us. And I know we're 2 years ahead of schedule, but there's a much higher expectation on what Dan Ashworth could be doing. He's really messed up with the Tonali thing. You can say what you like. They've messed up with the Tonali thing. It cost a lot of money. You see him on the videos training with us. It's heartbreaking to see him. We know he's not going to play. That is a big, massive red X. And I think the owners might be looking at that too. And so Dan Ashworth needs to up his game this January. Is my bad take, is that his transfer business, his transfer policy is not working for Newcastle United.
I mean, put the Tonali thing aside, because, bar Tonali and his buddy that was involved, like, you have Ivan Toney, and then this stuff just doesn't happen at this level. Maybe it's out there and people just don't know or whatever, but you have to think this is a bit of a freak occurrence, right? Like, this isn't AC Milan were desperate to get rid of this player because they knew the crack. AC Milan were desperate for money because all Italian clubs are desperate for money because they don't
Yeah.
have the income streams that Premier League clubs have. And when a Premier League club comes calling, especially one that like Newcastle, like they wanted the money, right? I think there's no doubt in my mind of that. Outside of that, has any of the signings been bad?
No.
Absolutely not. Right? Have they all been amazing? Too soon to tell.
Yeah.
But like until you can show me like a flop signing that we've had to bring in and get rid of. I mean, even Chris Wood wasn't a flop signing. We needed him at the time to do something specific, and then he moved on. Do you know what I mean? So like, yeah. Anyway, the less said about that, the better. I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Remember, guys, this is not
Right.
my opinion. It's not my opinion. This is just what's been garnered throughout the week of what. I mean, like I said, there's 7 or 8 things that people will complain about. But that one, other than Unai Emery is a better coach than Eddie Howe, and we should have got him in the first place. That was the one I was going to go with, but that upsets me.
Keep that
So
for next. Keep that
upsets me.
for when it inevitably surfaces again.
Yeah.
Right, lads. Let's move on. We're going to spend a few minutes talking about events that are going to unfold this week. To be honest, I think we're not even going to talk about the Fulham game that'll happen at the weekend after, because obviously, look, there'll be a week between podcasts, but this Milan game, I think, deserves a couple of minutes. Particularly, I think, let's be realistic. This is the Champions League game week 6 qualification on the table, very much on the table. Arguably the biggest, the most important, the most lucrative fixture of, the Eddie Howe era, the post Mike Ashley era, whatever you want to call it.
I think it's our history.
Potentially.
Yeah.
It's not miles off of that, for sure. Obviously, we've had a cup final this year, but looking ahead, this is huge. We don't know if and when we'll be in the Champions League again. I think we know we probably will at some point, but it may not be next season. So let's talk about it a little bit. We went through all the permutations last week on episode 2. I don't think we need to go into too much detail there. We know we need to win. We know we want PSG to not win. So we'll just focus on 2 things, which is 1, ourselves, right? How do we look? What do we need to get right? And then our opponents. How do we need to beat Milan, and who do we need to worry about? So, Alan, I'm going to start with you. Team news. So, look, at the weekend we saw, thankfully, Sean Longstaff and Callum Wilson come back to the bench.
Yeah.
Other whispers of other players floating around. So, do you think there's any surprises between now, which is Monday, and the Wednesday of the game in terms of the squad, the first 11, and the bench?
Squad, yes. I think we might see a certain Sven Botman make a return. I pray we do, because we really, really need, not that the sales has done bad, but Sven Botman is a Rolls Royce. He is world class. So I'd love to see him get him back, because, and then again, God forbid something like Fabian Schär was down injured 4 times a game. One of them eventually will be an actual injury, so he will have to come off eventually. So having an option there would be great. I can't see there being too many changes, if I'm honest with you. Potentially Longstaff coming in for Big Joe, because he was stinking against Tottenham. And I think Wilson will start ahead of Isak, and just to give him a break, because I don't think Isak has been 100% fit. I think he's very worried he might have a reoccurrence of an injury if he goes hell for leather. But come here, we're going to be all right. I'm expecting a 3-1 win. Come on, we're going to do it. It's grand.
Yeah.
Louis Miley's getting his first goal as well.
Love it.
I do have predictions here as a talking point. So, Alan, you've just given us yours, 3-1. And then, Krisho, I'll come over to you.
Yeah.
We have opponents that we're going to welcome to St. James's Park.
Yes, we do.
They're no small opponent by any means. We're talking about a European giant. It's AC Milan. I guess the questions for you would be, 1, give us an update on what you've heard about Rafa Leao, who we saw run a lot of rings around us, but just couldn't finish his dinner, let's be honest.
Yeah.
He had a hamstring injury not so long ago. I think Milan even lost at the weekend, and he hadn't been playing. Is he back? And then, aside from Leao, who else should we be worried about?
Leao, I'm going to tell you, is going to be starting. Yeah. Now, again, I'm not the manager of AC Milan, but I definitely think that they've nursed him, kept him good, specifically for this game. He's back. He's going to be playing up front. We need to be worrying about an ex-Chelsea boy, American fella, Christian Pulisic. He's on super good form in Milan. He's got a much clearer role. He's got a much freer reign in his kind of 10 kind of wandering position. Sometimes Serie A, it's it's kind of poor. Some of the teams are a bit poor, but he's really playing out of his skin there, and with a nice, experienced support of Giroud as well for the knockdowns and layoffs. It's very, very handy, those three. Yeah, Giroud and Pulisic. Like you said, Paul, they did lose 3-2 to Atalanta at the weekend, but they still are third in Serie A. I wouldn't mind if they were like 9th or 10th or something, going through some bad form. They're not really. They're actually playing very, very well. So I'm still as positive as Alan. The way we get to Milan, and it's the same way we do with all teams at St James's Park, is the occasion, the fans, and an early finish, an early goal. Take the bloody chances that we're definitely going to get. Just like if they probably would have done it in Milan, we probably would have lost 2 or 3-0. They didn't take their chances. Alan, you were there, but
yeah,
that's how we beat Milan. Is we get the crowd on top of them, get the goal early, and stick it tight, and get Pulisic out of the game, Leo out of the game, and hopefully Giroud doesn't do what he usually does with a back flick from 700 yards. But this is probably. I'm going to go with the prediction that we are going to win this game 2-0. A goal early and a goal late.
Yeah, nice.
2-0 too.
So we've got Alan with 3-1. We've got Chriso on a 2-0. I've put down a 2-1. And I think mainly, I do think we'll win. I think that I think that the absence of playing in St James's Park, having played 2 games away from home, that were, let's face it, really, really tough. The lift that our lads will get, no matter who walks out on the field of the first 11.
Yeah.
And the combination of the home fans, and as I said, there's going to be a big bunch of Irish mags in there, including myself, and we'll come to that in a moment. Along with the music, I think we will win. I don't think it's going to come easy. I think Milan have a point to prove, but the one bit of solace I'll take is they've not been great in the Champions League specifically. Like on the grand scheme of things, like they've also lost to Dortmund just like we have. So I think they will need to do a lot more to beat us coming into St James's Park, and I'm not sure they'll have it in them. So I think that we'll beat them 2-1. Fingers crossed.
And
lovely.
Yep.
As I said, we won't talk too much about Fulham. Great that we've got 2 home games back to back. That just feels good. I think what we could talk about, and we can move over to we'll move over to you, Christian, for this for our next section. Is upcoming events, and namely, I suppose, starting off, we've got 2 games this week. Again, let's talk meetups for Milan. I suppose we can start with Milan mainly. Let's start with the meetup for Milan, and I also believe, Christian, there is a lot of Irish mags traveling on Wednesday as well. So maybe we should talk about that.
Yeah, it's a big one this week, fellas. Like as we've just explained how big it is, but there's 2 types of meetups. There's a meetup in the Baker Street Bar, of course, as there is for all the Champions League nights. The last couple have been sensational crack. Honestly, one of the nights had 65 lads, and we had the crack, and ladies. We had the crack almighty. Yeah, pints flowing. It was everybody discussing the match, the whole game, and just right good crack. Yeah, just really like real good memories. Those real proper photo memories that we had, and lots of people making new friends and stuff. So Wednesday night, don't want to watch it up home or whatever, come down and join us. It'll be the crack almighty on Wednesday night. And separately to that, like you said, Paul, there's a special group now. If we're going over to Milan, I think we've got like 30 members going over. So they're like in a group now, organizing where they're going to meet, where they're going to start drinking, or non-alcoholic stuff also, and hanging out before the match and after the match, which is, again, like we started with episode 1. That was the whole purpose of all of this. Whether it's sitting in Dublin watching it, or Galway, or Cork, or Belfast, or when you go over to Newcastle, there's going to be 30 to 40 people that you know by name. Okay, you might not have met them in person before, but that's the exciting thing. And you can say hello to them and meet them up. So it's great that we have 40 members going over, and they're all on different flights, but they'll all be going from Dublin or Belfast or whatever, and all meeting up. Hopefully you'll all be searching for my gloves and Rosie's bar. Please go over there.
Yeah, well, judging by that group, actually, I can, because I think there's about 29 people in there. We were actually just talking about who's on what flights. I think I'm on one of the first flights of the day, so I'll be kicking off the meetup festivities. I think myself, I think it's Graham, Dean, Rowan are all on the 9:20 a.m. flight, so we'll have a bit of time to kill. We'll get the breakfast in. We'll start looking for the gloves early.
You are the posh lads on the Aer Lingus flight. Just rubbing that into everyone. Yeah, that's all that is.
Yeah, this is it. Any excuse to get over there early, Alan. You know me.
Stop.
So yeah, there's a massive gang. Then on the 12 o'clock flight, there's a group going from Belfast. So I think it'll all be kicking off. And for anyone who's traveling, if you're looking to meet up with any of the Irish Mags, get in touch. And naturally, as always, look for the Irish Mags crest, which can be seen in all the gear, and we expect everyone to be sporting it on the day. Absolutely. Excellent. I suppose I'll just stick with the trip as well, and I'll jump onto another piece of news really quickly, and then I'm going to come back to Alan for the breaking news that we mentioned at the top of the show.
Oh yeah.
Really excited to say that there is an event on in Newcastle on the day before the game. So that event is a Newcastle fans versus Milan fans charity football match in aid of the Newcastle Foundation's A Helping Hand at Christmas campaign. So the Newcastle United Foundation uses the power of football to connect, motivate, and inspire people through community, through education, health and well-being, and sports programs delivered all over the Northeast. Big focus on improving physical and mental health, learning and career prospects, and providing life-changing opportunities for everyone in the area. By the time you've listened to this, we should have shared more information about it. But what's really exciting and proud for us as the Irish Mags is that we will be representing. There are 3 of us going to be playing. I am actually one of them. Our friend who's no longer allowed to join us here, Tev, is another one.
Yeah.
I think Dean is the 3rd. And look, it's going to be a bit of crack, but I think we're really excited to go and kind of represent our little corner of the Newcastle United fan base, which we
play well, Paul. Please play well. Please play well, because Alan and I are two of the best drivers that Ireland's never
jealousy.
seen. Nothing but jealousy, right?
Yeah.
So this is why I'm going over so early to warm up, Alan.
Yeah,
I'll be doing a few laps. I'll be like in that movie Goal, where you see your man running, Santiago Nunez running down the beaches in Newcastle. I'll be doing the same. So yeah, that's really exciting, really proud. And there is a link in the description now, or either in Spotify, in Apple, or on, of course, YouTube, to donate to that event and that foundation as well, and all for a good cause.
Please do.
Yeah. It's a smashing cause, guys. Please help if you can.
Yeah, that would be great.
Super.
Guys.
Now, lastly, I received a piece of breaking news from Alan Williamson just before we hit record on this show. And I think our listeners need and deserve to hear this news, Alan, don't you?
Yes, so this will be starting to be pushed out probably after the Milan game, but January 6th, we have a small game that's live on ITV, I believe. We're playing, I don't know who they are.
Small team. Yeah, some small team.
So we decided we decided, sure, let's make a day out of it. We've a couple of lads coming from Cork. There might even be a couple of lads coming from Galway. Might even get the bloke from Wicklow to come back into Dublin.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're having our Christmas party in Bleecker Street Bar. Kickoff is 12:30, 1:45. So get there at 7:30, maybe 8 o'clock in the morning. Should be all right. No, honestly, if you can get to the Bleecker for the match, there's a couple of good games on that day. We might make a day out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Might even be a talk of a quiz after it, and maybe a mastermind in the flesh. You never know.
Wow.
Could be potentially happening. So look, if you can get up to the Bleecker on January 6th, our party will be on there. It'll be platters, pints, and parties. What more can you ask for?
Yeah, and meeting myself and Paul and Alan in person as well. Yeah,
and our autographs are only a £5 a pop, lad, so it's handy. Like
that's all.
Yeah.
That's all. And I think it's great. Obviously it's in Dublin, right? But we know probably the biggest percentage of our Irish Max community is in Dublin. But we already know a few lads have travelled up from Cork, for example. I've been in the Bleecker myself already a couple of months ago. It was the Liverpool game, so the one that started well and didn't end well. I'd love to make a trip up myself, and we're penciling it in. Excellent. Christmas is coming, and if you're not looking at us on YouTube, you wouldn't know, but Chris has his Christmas lights up, so you know it's true.
I do. They're only tiny, but they're
super. There. Right, guys.
Right.
Alan, you just mentioned a word that maybe if someone hasn't listened to this podcast last week, you may not be familiar with what is now the Irish Magstermind Challenge.
Love it.
Love it. So for the second week running, I get the privilege of pitting my talented co-hosts. Who wrote this script? My talented co-hosts NUFC knowledge against each other. And we're going to start right now, lads. So
No.
it's keeping in theme with the week that's in it, because obviously we have a huge Champions League fixture against AC Milan. I have a list of players in front of me who have played for both Newcastle and AC Milan. So
What?
I am going to
Oh man.
be asking you, now don't shout anything out yet. What you'll need to shout out first to play would be your name. So it's going to be fastest shout first. I'm going to give you a quick clue. There are 6 players on this list. So we won't be here all day, I hope, depending on your knowledge. So I'm going to give you a little clue, and then you shout your name to give me the correct answer. Right, lads, no pressure. Alan is deep in thought, though I can see at the bottom of my screen. So the first player to have played for both AC Milan and Newcastle.
Krisho.
This player... You need to get the one I'm looking for now.
Yes.
Sorry, it's trying to get in there.
-1 available.
Oh no.
I'll read the clue first. I'll be
Right,
looking for
got
something
it.
specific. This player played for AC Milan between 1997 and 1998, and played for Newcastle between 2004 and 2005.
Just for one season?
So, played for Newcastle, made 37 appearances between the year 2004-2005. Might not have been specific season. I have the years, basically the calendar years, and 33 appearances prior to that for AC Milan between 1997 and 1998.
Oh. Gotta have a stab here.
Go for it, Alan.
Emre Belözoğlu.
Can tell you that's incorrect. He would have played for the blue and black
Oh,
side of Milan, not the red. So I can tell you this player is a striker.
Wow. Demba Ba?
Incorrect.
0405, no.
I can tell you this is a Dutch striker.
Big Fat
I
Pat.
need you. Go again, Alan.
Patrick Kluivert.
Patrick Kluivert. Patrick Kluivert, if you are listening, I apologize for Alan's derogatory comments. He means it. He means it in a very positive and loving way. Patrick Kluivert is the correct answer and gets Alan the first point. Played for Newcastle between 2004 and 2005. Right, next player. This player is a defender who was at AC Milan, played 5 games for AC Milan between the years 1999 and 2004. Played 274 games for Newcastle from 2008 to 2016. And don't forget to shout your name first.
Alan.
Alan.
Fabrizio Collicini.
Can I please have the song that the Newcastle fans would sing to Collicini?
No. You cannot.
No.
Again, we'll keep that for the Christmas party.
Yes.
Fabrizio Collicini is the correct answer. So he spent between 4 and 5 years at AC Milan with a good few loan spells and only made 5 appearances, but 274 appearances for Newcastle. 2 points on the board for Alan. Right, next up, this striker made 35 appearances for Newcastle between 1997 and 1998, and then made 114 appearances for AC Milan between 2002 and 2005.
Krisho. Jan Dahl Thomas.
Confident.
Very good.
Jan Dahl Thomason gets Krisho on the board. I believe he's a manager now as well.
Yeah,
Blackburn Rovers.
Blackburn manager.
John Dahl Thomason, Danish striker indeed. Well done, Chris.
It was either him or Paul Dalglish at that time. Wasn't it? Paul
Don't
Dalglish.
remember Paul Dalglish playing in Milan somehow.
We made the right choice there anyway.
Yes. Next up, this defender made 11 appearances during a loan spell at Newcastle in 2007 and made 1 appearance for Milan in a spell that kind of lasted from 2009 to 2011.
Krisho.
Alan. Ooh.
I have Krisho first in my
Go on,
ear.
fire away.
Jeremy.
No.
Jeremy is incorrect. Or goes on offer to Alan.
This guy's an American centre half, isn't he?
I don't know until you tell me his name, Alan.
Oguchi Onyewu or on.
Huh?
Yeah, he came on loan to us from someone. and he was
Oh.
brutal. He
I can
was
tell you the
brutal.
correct answer is American defender Oguchi Onyewu. Gets Alan the 3rd point.
All this useless knowledge I have in my head is now finally coming good.
I remember he was with us. I remember he was big and strong, but wasn't special. But somehow he ended
was
up in Milan. And I
awful.
couldn't understand it. Yeah.
Yeah, he went to Milan after us after being absolutely terrible for us. Fair play to him.
Madness. Right. 2 to go. 1. Next one. This striker made 17 appearances for AC Milan between 1997 and 1998, and then made 32 appearances for Newcastle between 1998 and 1999.
Ooh.
If you are not currently watching on YouTube, both of them are looking down with the thinking caps on.
Sorry, when did he play for Newcastle?
So I'll repeat it quickly. 17 appearances for AC Milan between 1997 and 1998. Then 32 appearances for Newcastle between 1998 and 1999. A striker.
You wouldn't mind giving us his nationality, would you? Or a little hint?
I mean, I might. Yeah, I might.
Don't ask, you don't get.
Don't forget now, you need to shout your name
Mm-hmm.
for me to award point. This is a Swedish striker.
Swedish striker.
Swedish. That didn't help at all.
No.
I really thought it would, and I was clearly mistaken.
Wow.
This is going to be something that's going to drive me bananas now. What the hell?
Swedish
I
striker.
can tell you, this may or may not help, but like many, many Swedish gentlemen, he had glorious, luscious, long blonde hair, like I used to before I was grey. The listeners are roaring.
Yeah, they're
at their
shouting at
phones,
us.
I am
cars,
drawing
radio.
a long blonde hair.
Fairly long blonde hair, bright blonde hair for sure. I can tell you,
Blind.
he played in the 1998 FA Cup final, which we lost to Arsenal. I can tell you, he's one of those. Chris Show.
No, the reason I'm confused is because I'm thinking of Thomason, but he's Danish, and then it's around the same area. But this is Anderson.
Yeah.
Do we have a first name? I'll give you the point anyway, but do we have a first name?
Andreas Anderson, isn't it?
Andreas Anderson is correct. Proved a bit tougher than I thought. That you got some cobwebs in those brains you need to shake off, but that's what we're here for in the Irish Magstermind Challenge.
Did he play in that cup final? Good God.
Wikipedia would never lie to me, Alan. Right. Last on the list. Fingers on buzzers. This player played for AC Milan 95 times between 2020 and 2023 and has made 9 appearances for
It's the one and only.
Give it to me in song format, please.
Absolutely can't. We'll be cancelled. We'll be thrown off YouTube.
Fair.
It's our one and only suspended merchant, Sandro Tonali, unfortunately.
Sandro Tonali. It is, of course.
I was going to say Joey Barton. I don't know where I got that from.
In the news for different problems.
The less said about him, the better. Let's be honest about it.
I had to get him in there. I had to get him in there. Egypt. Okay. Well, Alan won this again, right?
Alan, I can tell you, for the second week running, and we made him work hard for it. We made both of you work hard for it.
That was
Alan
tough, and I enjoyed that.
This week's Magstermind. Well done, Alan.
Well done,
Thank you very
Alan.
much.
Well done,
Thank
Alan.
you.
A begrudging round of applause from Chris Show. There you go. And I can also tell you that brings episode 3 of the Irish Mags Show to a close. You can find links for all of the Irish Mags socials in the description below, along with that donation link for the Newcastle United Foundation charity fans game that's happening on the same day as our Champions League fixture against AC Milan. And you can also find our contact details if you need to get in touch, or if you're interested in partnering with us as an official Irish Mag sponsor, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you to everyone who has watched or listened today. We will be back next week to hopefully continue our European adventures discussion
Oh, yeah.
and hopefully be back to winning ways in the Premier League. So, lads, until then, how the lads, slán go fóill, and see you all next week. Say goodbye,
Slán
chaps.
go fóill.
Slán go fóill, fellas.
Thank
Slán
you
lad.
and goodbye.